I've spent the past 6 years travelling all around the country and around the world, speaking to young people and particularly to teenage girls about their experiences of sexism, gender inequality and even sexual violence. What's really struck me is that teenage girls today are running a gauntlet. They are bombarded with everything from sexual objectification to online pornography to pressure to send naked photographs of themselves over internet and media devices. What's really interesting about this is that nobody's talking about it. When these girls try to speak up, they're blamed for what's happening to them. They're under enormous pressure, but if they give in to that pressure and do what's being asked of them, then suddenly they're slut-shamed. Suddenly they're the slag, they're the slut, they're the one that should be ashamed. If they don't give in, then they're uptight, they're a prude. There's really no way for them to win. There's nowhere for them to go. But so much of this is happening online now that when I speak to people about my job, they say, oh, isn't it terrible? Isn't it terrible about social media and the internet and what it's doing to girls today and the problems it's creating in their lives? Well, around a year ago, I heard a story about a witch trial that happened in England in the 17th century. And it made me curious because I knew so much, as so many of us do, about the Salem witch trials, but I'd never heard about the craze sweeping through Europe. Actually, I discovered that between around the 16th and 18th centuries, witchcraft hysteria swept through Scotland in particular. Thousands and thousands of women were put to death, actually 3 times more in Scotland than in England during the same period, and they were much more likely to be burned at the stake than they were in England. What fascinated me about these stories as I started digging into them was the resonance with the work that I'm doing today. So many of these women were suspected for the same reasons that I was hearing teenage girls were struggling with in schools. I was talking to girls who were being dress coded and told that they weren't allowed to reveal their collarbones or their shoulders because their bodies were somehow inherently dangerous or damaging, that boys couldn't help themselves, that boys would be distracted, and so it was the girls who had to be punished. And the same was true of these stories that I was reading about young women, about the idea of their bodies, of their feminine wiles. The very idea of them being female was considered inherently dangerous and damaging, even something to be ashamed of. And over 3/4 of those who were put to death for witchcraft in Scotland during this period were women. The more I looked into it, the more I found one particular story, a story that was buried, that I had to really hunt down and piece together through old records, a story that had been handed down over the centuries of a young woman who lived in Scotland during the 17th century, who was accused of witchcraft after she was impregnated by a man who she had tried to resist. And when he was lost at sea, she was called a witch. What I suddenly realised was that the story of what she was dealing with, the ways that she was treated, the things that she was blamed for, the ways that she was shamed, they were exactly the same as the stories that I'm hearing from teenage girls today. And suddenly it struck me, this isn't new. This isn't something that social media has created. It isn't a problem that came with the internet. It's about the way that we've always treated women and girls and the ways that we continue to treat them today. So I wanted to tell a story that would span across time, that would look at a girl today facing all that girls today are up against, but also at a forgotten story of a woman who once may have lived in the same place that my modern day heroine grows up, everything that she dealt with and how their stories fit together across time.